there's still a lot of misconception and skepticism from for public, especially parent ask me about why this never have been talked about. The first question is not about whether you can see properly. It's about how your vision impact your social life, your daily activities. And sometimes they may not even realize what does a normal vision look like. The biggest mistake is not to make the mistake. If you're not able to make the mistake, you're not able to really find out what you're truly lacking, where your deficiency lies into.
This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. Today's guest is someone I'm thrilled to learn more about. He's a distinguished optometrist who specializes in myopia management, pediatric optometry, specialty contact lenses, and ocular disease. He's emerged as a leading voice in the global conversation around myopia, sharing insights on national and international stages, including his well-known TEDx talk, Myopia, Global Epidemic. His leadership extends across the profession through his roles with Johnson & Johnson Vision and Essilor's Myopia Task Force, as well as frequent contributions to major conferences and publications. He's Senior Clinical Director at Treehouse Eyes and Medical Co-Editor of Review of Myopia Management. Please welcome Dr. Kevin Chan. Kevin, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I love your background. I love how you've grown your empire because it's different than the traditional growing multiple locations. So tell me more about what was your secret and what was the most important thing that helped you grow your empire?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest, there's probably no definitive answer. And obviously, every individual have their own story, to tell. My story is actually pretty simple and kind of straightforward. And to some people, it can be boring as well. I did not grow up in the medical family. I have no family member who is in the medical industry. I'm actually the first generation person who ended up being optometrist in the entire family. So I have no, footstep to follow. I kind of create my own path. And as my startup with my career, there's so many things I still haven't had a chance to really explore what I really want to do, what my passion lies into. And, but thankfully, there's a lot of people around me, who provide me, really great support, mentorship. And that's where it led to where I am now. And I'm very fortunate to have other opportunities to mentor other people, students and residents. And so, yeah, I feel very fortunate to, I wouldn't say it's an empire, but I really create something that I truly enjoy. And this is the path that, everyone needs to kind of grab in their own way.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I'm curious, as you were growing your expertise, you're really a world-class expert in myopia. What were things that you ran into that you didn't expect?
Yeah. So when it comes to expectation, there's a lot of in a clinical practice, I'm sure many practitioners can resonate with that. There's no single patient walking in for the same chief complaint. And, we as a clinician need to kind of, self-diagnose and make sure you troubleshoot it based on individual need. And even with, in the realm of myopia management, there's actually no single foolproof method to really tackle every single patient. With, for example, with a -1 myop coming in, even though they share the same characteristics, but sometimes you do need to think outside the box and really be able to listen to what they truly experience and struggle. And especially when we're dealing with pediatric population, there's still so many things that you have to, beyond the hard skill that you learn in school, you also have to kind of exercise and implement the soft skill that you learn through interactions.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm curious, you got a TEDx platform. It's interesting because I actually saw your TEDx talk at some point when I was just curious about myopia control before I even knew you. So I was excited to have you on the show. Did you get any resistance from the public, or did you get social media can be really kind of tough, right? Because you put yourself out there. What kind of feedback and did you hear? And what were things that you heard that you maybe not have expected? Or did you not get that? Was it all positive?
Yeah, when I first got an invitation to do a TEDx talks, I feel very surreal. I didn't realize there's such opportunity out there, especially in the eye care community. And yes, definitely there are certain resistance and hesitancy or even skepticism about what an eye doctor can provide, on a TEDx platform. And it's kind of because in in my um in my year, they were selecting, different people representing different industry, including healthcare, business, technology. Back then, I did my TEDx talk in 2019, and back then the AI industry wasn't very booming back then. So fast forward, right now we're seeing a lot of like AI, driven, technology, and including eye care industry has been somewhat, being the beneficiary about for AI. And going back to my experience as a TEDx speaker, there's a lot of things that the public may not even aware. There's such a thing as myopia or treatment for myopia, and there's still a lot of like misconception and skepticism from for public, especially parent ask me about why this never had been talked about. From my eye care experience, when I went to see the eye doctor, no one ever told me about that, and so that is something that is truly wide opening. And I want to fill the void, as a speaker, to be able to fill the void, and hopefully we can provide general public more information that is really credible and be able to help, the next generation.
Yeah, I love that.
Mhm.
Um, what are some of the common so I'm gonna we're gonna if it's okay, I'm gonna ask you to kind of share some of your myopia expertise. Because I think that listeners will really appreciate that because there's a lot of folks listening who do have myopia specializations in their practices. What are some things that you see? I'll ask 2 questions, and you can decide where to answer first. One question is, what do you see are the common mistakes that, beginner myopia practices do? And what are common mistakes that you see more advanced myopia practices do that are like, "Okay, well, you can modify this to get better results for your patients or better, make it a better, business for you as well?"
Yeah, I think I would start off by addressing the first question about what are the common challenges or, mistake that, clinician may encounter. And I think I myself as a clinician also learn through mistakes, but I appreciate the fact that I'm driven to be able to make mistake, and I'm relentless about making mistake. I don't want the mistake to be my hindrance of future success. And I think when I start out my career, and just like many of you listening, I think the biggest mistake is not to make the mistake. If you're not able to make the mistake, you're not able to really find out what you're truly lacking, where your deficiency lies into. My deficiency back then was the lack of confidence of treating myopia. And when a kid come in, I'm not really sure. I wasn't sure, how to handle the situation where kids were crying, parents were, skeptical, and there's nothing that could be truly channeled into the mindset about myopia. And but I kept going, and I really truly believe, that is something that is going to be helpful and kind of change the trajectory for the kid, in the next 10 to 20 years down the road. So I trust my gut feeling, and I know that this is going to be, channeled through conversation and repetition. I think another thing that I myself have learned as a clinician is that, don't worry about or don't be scared of repetition. Study actually have found that if you don't repeat yourself over and over again, it would actually take at least 5 to 6 times, for the same message to be, conveyed to your recipient, no matter it's a parent or kids or whoever you're talking to. It takes at least 5 to 6 times repetition, to be able to get the message across and be able to, change the message into action.
I like that.
And that is something that I learned, through my failure, through my mistake. And sometimes clinicians find that, oh, I need to gather so many different information from A to Z in order to make the best treatment plan. Definitely, I agree. And I think information is key to facilitate your action. But I think sometimes, clinician also be feeling like they are being paralyzed by so much decision making just because of the abundant information available, especially, in the era of AI these days. You can simply feed the prompt, into the source, and then you can get hundreds and hundreds of prompt back, about what you can do for certain thing, not just limited to myopia. And sometimes I found that clinicians need to exercise their own, in their own mindset and be able to kind of filter out some of the information generated by the AI, because the lack of decision making usually comes from, ironically speaking, comes from the abundance of information available.
Right.
It kind of paralyzes our mindset about what we can do, what can be done to best serve the patient. But sometimes, you have to go back to the basic and figure out, am I truly listening to my patient? What are the chief complaint? Is the AI going to be able to filter all these nuances and help me figure out the best treatment plan for my patient? So I think in the realm of myopia management, I think I I've learned from the one mistake. Don't be bogged down by the fact that you have so much information out there and you read something from this source and that source. Just because of that, it kind of hinder you from doing anything for the kids. Because right now, I feel a lot of clinicians are still hesitant from pursuing, the full myopia management in full force. They're still kind of dabble into, oh yeah, I heard about this, but I don't know whether this is going to be working or not. So that's why I decide not to, jump the gun or, dip my toes into the water. But that is actually doing the kids a disservice in the long run. I think at the end of the day, I would recommend, clinicians to be able to, trust your gut feeling and be able to do something, even though you're starting, for this journey for myopia management. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy about, just because you don't know anything doesn't mean you shouldn't be taking any action for the patient.
I like that. And, I'm not a doctor, but in other decisions like this, I always look at what's the potential downside if I take an action and what's the potential upside. And in this case, it sounds like the upside's way better than any kind of potential downside that you may do with any kind of myopia treatment. And it's interesting because you said something, especially with AI and overwhelming information. I heard a quote one time. You tell me if this resonates.
Mm.
That mastery is simplicity on the other side of complexity. So you can say like E equals MC squared, right? It's such a brilliant, simple state, or F equals MA, right? But this is on the other side of like, oh, there's a lot of information that goes into creating this formula because it's on the other simplicity on the other side of complexity. Is that kind of what you're saying? Is like, hey, you know what? Yes, you kind of have to understand all the information, but to be able to make a decision and to get through that complexity, you've got to actually try and see what works and do activities versus not doing anything.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with your analogy about, the irony between complexity and simplicity. I think the best thing to do things well is not about make things complicated. Just because you can showcase how complex the eyeball is, or using the theory of myopic defocus to explain to the patient. Yes, it show you, how complex the eyes are, or show the parent, how smart you are. But at the same time, if you're not able to digest and be able to, get into the core or the simplicity of the message, nothing will stick. And sometimes parents just they actually respond not by intellectual understanding, but more to do with the cognitive, resonance from your message. And I think the challenge and also the good exercise for me and for other clinicians to do is, no matter which field you're doing, no matter it's myopia management or any, sort of glaucoma care or any other sort of eye care sector, you do need to be able to filter the message based on how much you know and be able to simplify things and make a really emotional connection to your audience. And I think that's also how I learned through my TEDx experience. When I talk to hundreds and hundreds of audience, you don't expect everything will stick, but what stick is actually how you create a connection with your audience, even though we are strangers to each other. But I think this bridge is really difficult to build, and you did need to take experience and be able to learn from your own failure to do so.
Yeah, I like that. It's good insight. So why go down this path that you went down? What drives you specifically around myopia and specifically being such a deep expert? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it traced back to the notion back about a decade ago when I first started with the field of myopia management. I was a novice back then, and I don't really know, wasn't sure what this is the path that I wanted to dive into. But as I learned more and more about the industry, and I learned that myopia could be back then, 10 years ago, back then, I was thinking, myopia management could be the next frontier, the next way, the source of our revenue. And obviously, we also have the opportunity to make a big difference, transformative difference for our young kids because, we're not just taking care of the patient for that specific time frame, but we're doing something that will actually change the course of, their development, over the next 10 or 20 years later. And I think that is truly rewarding for me to kind of be the first person witnessing, how the kids grow. And fast forward 10, 12 years later, I'm still witnessing my patient, from their, development stage and to the point where they start telling me that, oh, I'm going to college. That is really humbling experience to help the kid, from the startup, you know. So I think that is my driving force of how we can, make a difference for the next generation.
I like that. Uh, so curious, what are you most excited about for the future of optometry, myopia control, maybe your own practices, maybe even Treehouse Eyes? Like, tell us what you're excited about the future.
Yeah, so the future is definitely endless, and as I mentioned earlier, we're just tapping the tip of the iceberg in the field of marketing management. I think with the help of AI and other technological advance, I think there's so much things we haven't even explored. For example, I just recently did a lecture about how we utilize epigenetics as one of the discipline that we can expand further. For those who are not familiar with epigenetics, it's actually the like a joint discipline between how we analyze genetics and incorporate with the environmental factors to make the best clinical decision for our patient. Right now, we're just talking about what kind of resources or evidence are out there to support market management. On the other hand, we also have data to support environmental changes can actually shape how the eye develop over time. What if we can combine, using, AI technology to be able to combine these two disciplines together and really make a well-informed decision, not just about guessing, but really truly understand how each individual can, can be impacted by the environment. And that way we can actually do a cocktail approach for a patient. For example, you know, if we're able to use AI to help facilitate the decision making of how much atropine, we're doing with the patient, or how we utilize orthokeratology to modify the design to be able to best customize for the treatment outcome. And I think that will be the near future, for the next generation.
I like that. That's
Yep.
pretty good. It's there's a lot of exciting technologies coming out and a lot of exciting things. So that's gonna be cool. Wish we had this when I was growing up. So
So do I. Mhm.
are you a heavy myopic?
I myself am a -5 mile,
Okay.
and so I definitely can echo and how the kids, grow up, back then,
Yeah.
and when I see patient coming in without correction when they're already myopic, the first question is not about whether you can see properly. It's about how your vision impact your social life, your daily activities. And sometimes they may not even realize what does a normal vision look like. They thought that walking around with a -3 diopter supposed to be normal, but they don't realize what is considered normal or not. So I think that truly resonate, coming from someone like me, as a myope. I'm sure many listener can relate it to that as well. And I think that would actually make the case even more compelling. As a clinician, you understand where they're coming from, and if you cannot speak from their own language, it's really hard to connect emotionally.
Gotcha. I like that. So let's shift gears a little bit. I'm curious to learn more about you personally.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what makes you tick. Like, give me a story that was really formative for you that made you who you are today.
Wow, that's a really profound question, and I think um, that is something I'm still exploring, and I don't may not have a good answer for this. And I think, like what I said, I am I can consider myself as an experimental person, and I don't mind making mistakes or trying something new, even though you would probably encounter some roadblocks. But that actually opened up new opportunity to let yourself understand, what your capabilities are, where your limitations would be. And if you were to ask me what really shaped how I am today, and I think it's about the the relentless and be able to make failure to be my fuel for going further. And I think many of you probably have heard a term called grit, and it's more than just perseverance. And it's actually something, I think, based on the definition of grit. And the psychologists actually define it grit as something that you persevere and through challenges and not giving up. And I think growing up as a myope, and I definitely understand what the challenges are and how I can channel through the challenges. And no one is perfect. And sometimes I found that being a clinician, in this specific field, there's still a lot of roadblock that I may have a hard time, explaining to my colleagues who may not be familiar with this field. But I've been doing my best to really educate my peers, my patient, and hopefully one day, myopia management will no longer be a novelty, and it's something that we can all communicate with the same languages. Because right now I'm seeing that there's still a lot of misconception within the healthcare industry about myopia management. Is this something worth doing it? Is this something that that could actually transcend to the next generation of eye care? Um, but for me personally, I think one thing that I learned the most through my career is you know um, do not do not give up. It sounds cliche and very, just something that, if you keep, saying that I cannot do it or I don't have enough information to achieve this, and I think you are just going to be stuck, at where you are. Um, so I think, yeah, so that is something that truly propel me to drive me to where I am today.
I like that. Um, and what if you were to go back in time, give younger Kevin advice right out of OD school? What advice would you give to yourself?
Yeah, so a lesson learned through my career is I was thinking one day, if I were should I not be an optometrist, what would I be? And that is truly profounding. Um, at that time, I wasn't aware, optometry even a thing back in the old days. You know, if you ask a younger Kevin Chan, I may not even answer you. I want to become an optometrist. I actually have an aspiration when I grow up. I want to be an architect because I like structure, I like organization, and I know being an architect requires a lot of resilience and super organizational skill. And but the reason why I changed course to become an optometrist is I think through the curiosity of being aspiring to be an architect, I learned that healthcare can truly make a difference for one another. And I think the one-on-one interaction truly make make myself feel like this is something I truly want to get into, get connected to one another and be able to truly make a impact for my patient.
I like that. It's good insight. Insight. Um, and so, you know, I'd like to, we're starting a section in our podcast, a shout out section. So, give you an opportunity to kind of recognize peers and other people in the industry that you see doing good work. Is there anyone in particular that you feel does really good work that you'd like to shout out on the podcast that, hey, if you're interested in diving deeper, you can go and check out these folks or maybe contact these folks or just maybe some good resources for other folks to get connected to?
Yeah, so I think um, if you're talking about people who I look up to, there's plenty of them, throughout my career. And I'll first start up with the, organization for which I feel like truly instrumental for my career development. One of which is the American Academy of Orthokeratology and Myopia Control, AAOMC. And that is something that I have, since my development of my career in this field, in myopia management, I truly have benefited a lot tremendously from this organization, AOMC. I think it's not just a common name for many folks listening because it's not as common because it's a so-called a niche for eye care industry. But in fact, a lot of people actually get into that, and they cannot stop. They cannot stop going for this event because it truly provide you a lot of resources and head starter to be able to help you how to get started with this myopia management and be able to get comfortable in this field. And like doing primary eye care, there's still a lot of nuances that clinicians need to find the way to be able to finesse in the journey. And so we're not going to get into that nitty gritty stuff about how to differentiate between primary care and providing myopia management for patients. That's not the scope of the talk today. But I truly encourage people to kind of get into the AOMC organization and learn more about what they can offer, how they can really, differentiate yourself, as a clinician and also as an individual personally.
I like that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And Kevin, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Well, definitely, I welcome any questions and interaction with me. You can contact me by emailing kevinchan.od@gmail.com.
And we'll put that in the show notes along with some other connection points for you as well. So,
Absolutely, thank you.
yeah. Well, again, Dr. Kevin Chan, thank you again for being a guest on the show.
Thank you so much. I could appreciate it.
Yeah. And one thing I like to do is reflect on what I learned in this process. I learned two things. One, that you can build an empire, even if it's writing one publication, that's an empire for some folks, right? Or being a TEDx talk is an empire. Along with just try, mitigate your downside, but just try it. Get into action. Don't wait till you have all the information. Just keep trying because that'll help your patients in the long run. And so, thank you again for sharing those insights.
Yeah, to sum up, I would also conclude that, there's one take-home lesson through my career is building an empire is not a big word. I think a lot of folks still out there, they don't believe that, oh, I can really build an empire. I think empire, to my knowledge, is not something, tangible. Rather, it's actually something that, you have to believe in what empire means to you. To me, empire is not something you build, 30 practice location, nationwide, or achieve something no one ever achieved. I think empire in my definition is more to do with how you can overcome your obstacles and be able to make an impact for other people, no matter it's a person, a patient, your family member. I think building an empire is very personalized, and no one can actually speak for you what an empire means to you. For me, an empire is simply like it's not about doing a TEDx talk. It's not about writing an article. It's about what I have achieved or going to achieve, to make an impact for my patients. And at the end of the day, you want to make a difference for one another because that's the essence of why we become an optometrist, at the very beginning.
I love that. That is great insight. And thank you again, Dr. Chan, for sharing that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure. And thank you, audience. If you learned something or laughed, please share the podcast and please make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Also, if you use a link in the show notes to book a meeting, I'll be happy to send you a free copy of my book, Optometry Redefined. Thank you again, Dr. Chan. This has been another exciting episode of Optometrists Building Empires, and we'll see you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.